Alright guys, we are back with some more MX versus ATV Legends. Today we are going to check out the two best tracks and the two worst, the two best tracks in my opinion. We already did the worst tracks. This is just the best tracks. And the beginning here, I wanted to do some first person because it's my favorite camera angle in the game. But this is Seattle, and this Supercross track, the Supercross tracks were probably more difficult for me to decide which were my two favorite, because I said it with Minneapolis and Arlington that the Supercross tracks, for the most part, I like all of them, right? So it was pretty tough, and your list will probably be different than mine, which is great because that tells me they made really great tracks this time around. Tracks that, you know, different people will like different tracks because there's so many decent tracks, good tracks, great tracks to choose from. So this is kind of why I wanted to put this part in the video at the very beginning, because I love Seattle. I feel like this is probably one of the more difficult Supercross tracks in the game. It has tons of different lines around the track. It has some huge lines that aren't extremely difficult, but are tough, right? Especially if you're trying to get it during a race or a multiplayer match or whatever it might be. This track can be tough, even just going for the standard way around the track. It can be tough. It has to have some throttle control or scrubbing to try and, you know, shave some height off the jump. The track is very, technical. Yeah, this track can be very technical, and there's a few other tracks that are kind of this way, but yeah, I love Seattle. Great track. We do 2 Supercross tracks and 2 motocross tracks for our favorite ones in the game, and again, it was tough. It was a very tough. By the way, you can't hit a huge quad off of this final rhythm section before the finish line. Just kind of saying. Tons of line choice, fun track, challenging track, but let's jump into this with the first 2 Supercross tracks. Okay, so this is the first track we're checking out. These tracks are in no particular order. We just start with Supercross and then do the 2 outdoor tracks. So this is Denver, and this track, a few of the tracks when I first played the game, they were fun. But I decided I liked them more the more I played the game, right? You find different lines, you get better at them, and after playing multiplayer, that does play a pretty big role in which tracks I decided I thought were fun. So this is Denver, and Denver is on this list because it has a ton of different lines. I mean, lines don't make the best tracks all the time, but it doesn't hurt most of the time, right? And Denver has those 2 rhythm sections back to back. There's so many different ways you can go through them, right? And they have really big, huge lines you can go for. You'll see through these 2 laps we have kind of hitting some of them. And I always enjoy seeing a big kind of fantasy line to go for. I mean, just because it's a quad doesn't make it not realistic, but how big the quad can be sometimes can make it kind of unrealistic, and I enjoy that in a game. I mean, it's an arcade game. It isn't the most realistic simulator. It isn't supposed to be that, so that's always fun for me. And then after the Supercross triple, that rhythm section is actually pretty tough. There's a few different ways you can go through it. You can go outside and step onto the table, or you can kind of roll over, wheelie over the first roller, and then quad or triple, and it gives you a different line through it. So there's really 3 different ways through this rhythm section at the very end here. So yeah, Denver is a freaking awesome track, and it does make my list of 2 best Supercross tracks. And this is the second track on the 2 Supercross tracks that are my favorite. This would be St. Louis. Now, this track was kind of fighting for position with Seattle, and I know I said in the last, or for the last track, that line choice makes a track fun. And I know this track doesn't have the same line choice Denver has. It has some. I mean, after the second whoop section, you know, tiny whoop section, you can double, 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 or triple, triple. And this back rhythm section, you can quad, which is what we do here, quad, single. And we go through it a different way. I feel like that probably is the fastest way through that section, but it's pretty tough. That rhythm section, in my opinion, is what decides whether you win the race here or not in multiplayer. I've played this track quite a few times online, and it always comes down to that rhythm section. And usually what I do is triple in because it is more consistent, but it is still pretty tough. And this track, even if it is a bit easy, is really, really flowy and is probably one of, if not my favorite track to race in multiplayer. It's easy, it's short, you can get a good flow. I usually feel pretty fast here. I know we're not the fastest player in the world. We never have been. We're never the best at anything. But I feel like we're pretty decent for the most part. Maybe not for the fastest lap in the world, but just for racing and trying to be consistent and having a good flow, I feel like we do that pretty well on this track. So yeah, St. Louis does make the top 2 best Supercross tracks in my opinion. And switching over to outdoors, this is San Sendero. Might be saying that wrong, but this track, I fell in love with this track the first time I played it. It is so fun. It's an amazing track to play, and it's even better played in first person. The track is gorgeous. It has great flow. It has a few parts on it that can be kind of tough, but overall, I mean, it has all the stuff that I enjoy in an outdoor track. It could be a bit rougher, yeah, for sure. It could have more ruts that develop on it, but for the most part, it's jumpy, it has rhythm, it has a bunch of hills, a bunch of elevation, it has the fast pace, it has some sections that can be a bit slower, but for the most part, it is a very fast-paced motocross track. But it probably, I know I said they're not really in any particular order, but actually, the more I think about it, this is probably my favorite motocross track in the game. Not counting, we're not going to count the replicas or any DLC. If you're watching this video a bit later, after, you know, maybe a few months, a year, whatever, I'm not counting any DLC that might have been added, because I do remember with MX versus ATV All Out, the hometown track pack, the what would it be, Bighorn and Crescent Lakes, that hometown track pack DLC, those tracks were amazing, and in my opinion way better than any of the stock tracks that they had in the game. So no, we're not going to count DLC. I know some of you guys said that the 2022 replicas were your favorite track, and yeah, for sure, those tracks would definitely make the list, right? I mean, Unadilla is my favorite track in the world, so yeah, it definitely should be on here, but we're not counting. We're just going to count the base game tracks, right? If you're watching it later, and I forgot to mention if they added, you know, free updates with free tracks or changes or additions to the game, I don't have them, obviously, because they didn't exist when I made this video, but at the time of making it, a couple months after release, this is San Sendero, and it probably is my favorite motocross track in the game. And to wrap it up, this is, what is this track called? This is, oh boy, Overlook, I think? I'm not sure. The Snow Mountain track, right? It's the only one like this in the game as far as motocross track, supercross track, and so it has a very unique setting to it, and it has huge jumps, right? I mean, I was gonna say something else, but it has huge jumps. It's very flowy. It has a few sections where, I don't know if you'd call it a rhythm section, but kind of a rhythm section on it, and just big sends everywhere. Now, I haven't raced this track in multiplayer, I know it might not be the most difficult track to play. There are more difficult tracks. Archer, I would say, is a more difficult track. It's a long track. It's very, very rough. Probably one of the roughest tracks in the game as of right now. And it has a rhythm section on it that can be difficult. So this isn't the most difficult track in the game, but it's fun. I feel pretty flowy here. It isn't that difficult. It is pretty easy, but it's fun. These huge, big, unrealistic full sends are just awesome. They're so much fun. They're so awesome to hit them and just to try and burn off laps and try and shave maybe a second or two off your lap time. So yeah, Overlook is great. There were a few other tracks that I wanted to put. Rio del Sol. That track is awesome. Again, it is pretty easy, but I just love that track. I feel really fast. Can't talk today. Fast when I play that track. Big West, Big Horn. Those tracks are both really awesome, and I almost put them in the video, but technically those tracks were in All Out, and even if I enjoy them better in this game because I like the way the game plays better, I just didn't feel like it was fair to put those tracks in the video, not the game, the video. I'm happy they're in the game, but I felt like I wanted to choose something more original, right? So yeah, I can see you saying those tracks are your favorite. They're some of my favorites too, but you know, wanted to keep it more for the original side instead of bringing something that had been in a past game, right? So would be curious to see your list in the comments down below. But you guys and girls are absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for the support on the channel lately. It really does mean a lot. And until the next video, take it easy.